time. Now, there's being a sheet on the third parak in Shemona Perukim. I brought Shemona Perukim here. 3 of them. I made a new version of it. 1, 2. It's the same. Don't worry. But just so you know where I am. 3. And the third chapter, I'm going to tell you what it says, and then I'm going to talk about it. According to the Rebbe of Gestorben. What it says is like this, okay? You know where we're up to in the book, right? Everyone knows, right? We're up to like this, that there's two chapters before. The 2 chapters before were psychology, right? Psychology, yeah?
Psychologia.
Psychologia, okay. Psyche is nefesh, and logia is torat, okay? The theory of, or the logos of, or the words about, would be like a very literal translation. And that's psychology, the knowledge of the soul, science of the soul. That's what we did for chapter 1 and chapter 2, right? Why did we do that? Remember, because ethics is the health of the soul, and you can't have of anything before having the thing. So if it's health of the soul, you got to know the soul, right? Stimmt? Yeah? Stimmt? Stein is behind the camera. It bothers me. I can't see you. That's why I put the camera all the way there, so people doesn't block people. You'll notice I'm just giving you another interpretive comment. That's the Rambam's claim. It says, started in the beginning of chapter 1, that we need to have psychology in order to have ethics, right? Interestingly, he wrote a different book called... What was the Rambam? Oh, you asked me about this. Someone asked me about this. He wrote a different book called... What was the Rambam's other book called? Yeah. No, Mishnah Torah. Right. The Rambam wrote a different book called the Torah, Mishnah Torah. And in that book he also included ethics called
Beis.
Very good. And in Hilchos Beis it says everything that it says, not everything, most things that it says in Shemona Perukim, or the important thing, which he defined the subject of Shemona Perukim as being about ethics. So l'chayra it says it should say everything there. They have the same definition, although Shemona Perukim has some side things and that has some side things beside it, but it should be that. And interestingly, what's interesting? It doesn't have any psychology in it. So what happened? He changed his mind. In the beginning of Shemona Perukim, he told us that in order to do ethics correctly, you need to do psychology, and more specifically, you need to do the parts of the soul, even more specifically. And in another book where he summarized everything, and he said you don't have to read any other books besides for this book and the Bible, he didn't tell us any psychology, but he did tell us something called ethics. Tzurichin.
I mean, ethics is the science of the perfection of the soul.
Very nice. And in the beginning of chapter 1 it said, in order, just like a doctor, he had this knowledge of a doctor, just like a doctor can't be a good doctor without knowing the body, the doctor of the soul can't be a good doctor of the soul without knowing the parts of the soul. And you could read the entire Mishnah Torah and not know that they're parts of the soul.
Are there different kinds of, or more targeted forms of, meaning do you just need to know the parts of the soul to establish your ethical theory, or do you need it for your ethical theory to work?
I don't know. What do you think?
It seems that it's.
I got a shortcut for my sheet. Instead of answering questions, I just say, "What do you think?" And
No, meaning if we have Hilchos Deis and I'm just proposing it. I don't know, but in Shemona Perukim, it's explaining what a good theory of psychology might look like based on how the soul is. But
a theory of ethics, you mean?
Well, yeah. Sorry, how a good theory of ethics can work based on a good psychology, but based on true psychology. But once you understand the psychology and you have the ethical model to support it, what do you need to know?
So then why is it important?
If I need to know what the disease is in order for me to make a cure for it, but I don't need to know the disease every time I administer the cure, right?
So would the claim be that Shemona Perukim is for professionals and Hilchos Deis is for the people listening to the professionals?
Or Shemona Perukim is for people who want to understand the logical progression from what the soul is to how you go about perfecting it, and Mishnah Torah is for people who want to go about doing that perfection.
It would be nice if that would be true. You will recall that the Mishnah Perukim doesn't actually derive the good of the soul from the what it is.
That's why I meant that it's not for necessarily the initiated versus the uninitiated, but it's just one is explaining.
But it doesn't actually explain anything. It actually seems from this would actually be a good theory, and I think probably some of it is true. In other words, he's trying to do more explanation of the why in Shmona Perukim. Like you know, famously, the Mishnah Torah doesn't do whys at all, right? It's a book of effects without causes, right? Which is another word for Psak Halacha without Gemura, and he does the same for. And he does the same for his machshava that he puts in it, right? This is explicit in the Rambam in the Geras Tchias and other places that he did the same exact. He followed the same method for what's called Hilchas, Sefer Hamada, which is Hilchas Yesod HaTorah and the like, as he followed for all the other halachas. Just like in all the other halachas, he didn't care to explain you why the halachas are so. He just told you that they are so. It's just a book of laws, right? It's not the book of laws. Not ich darf das machen sicher etwas. Ich darf das machen sicher als the man Mike hat a battery was schwach. This kannst sehen as it goes up and down the thing. It might stop at one point, and if it stops, then you have to take out this mic and let it on that thing. Ich had sagen was it sagen was it stopped. Ich had sagen the instructions down without the cause, just the laws. Anyways, a book of laws doesn't, according to the Ram, doesn't have to give causes. The law judge probably has to know causes. This is a different problem. If Rambam is a good book for judges or only for students, but anyways, he does the same for his agudah, his yesodus, his what he calls his theology and his ethics. So it seems that some of that is true, and for sure it's true that the framing of Hilchas Dayas is not how to be a good person. What's the frame of Hilchas Dayas?
What to do.
What is the framing of Hilchas Dayas? What's the framing of every halacha in the Rambam?
What do you mean by framing?
You learned Rambam. What I mean by framing? How it's organized. What's the story that he tells you? What's the whole story of Mishnah Torah? There's only one story.
The soul gets sick, and this is how you heal.
That's the story of Shmona Perukim. What's the story of Mishnah Torah?
He gives the same story here.
No, he does not give the same story. He says this in some sense, in some way, but he doesn't give the sense. What's the story of Mishnah Torah? Yeah, thank you very much. The story of Mishnah Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu gave the 613 mitzvahs, and these are they. And each specific halacha has a story which goes, these are the 6 mitzvahs that are relevant, that are connected with this category of stuff, and this is what they are. That's the framing of the entire Mishnah Torah. There's never a different story in it. It's extremely consistent about it.
Yeah, but in Deis he says that this is right from the Nefashis and
no, he does not. The Hilchas Deis starts by saying there is a mitzvah such and such, which means you should have a good mitzvah, and then it happens to have a little. That's the specific framing of Hilchas Deis. You could read it.
Yeah.
The beginning of Hilchas Deis starts like this. It's a mitzvah to have this correct virtues, and then it goes on to say something like in the Perek beis, that's whole Perek Aleph is describing this mitzvah. And Perek beis it says, what do you do if you don't have the virtue? So then there's some solutions for that, and it frames in the same way as any other mitzvah. The mitzvah of Pesach is eat matzah. What if your matzah didn't work out? I'll give you solutions. It's not framed at all in the way that it's framed here, which is closer at least to philosophical framing, which is you want to become a good person or something like that. So that's for sure why he doesn't start with the soul. But I'm not enough to answer this question, by the way. You're going to have to tell me an answer. But it's not a good enough answer, mostly because Shmona Perukim is still very far from work or philosophy. Right?
What do you mean by question? You don't know why Mishnah Torah is set up that way? Like, that's what his goal is?
Yeah, how? No. If it's true, I'm asking a Stiras Rambam, like all the Rishivas, that's all I do. Stiras Rambam. If the Rambam and Shmona Perukim told us that in order to do ethics, we need to have parts of the soul, we need to have psychology. In other words, just like you'd be a very bad actor if you don't know how the body looks and works.
Can you say that Mishnah Torah was written for certain people and this was written for other people?
Yeah, but there's a problem here, right? Because that still doesn't work together with what he says in Shmona Perukim. Because the Shmona Perukim says like it can. If Shmona would be right, then you would say that you don't really need to have the psychology in order to do the ethics. You only need the psychology in order to derive the ethics, like to prove them. Like my analogy of knowing the Gemara. You have to know the Mishnah and the Gemara in order to know who told the Rambam that the halacha is like this. But if you just want to know what to do, you don't need to know all of that. And it's a waste of time to know all of that. But that doesn't...
The first two Perukim, Shmona Perukim is the Svuris.
That's what it would... Shmuley proposed. Harav Reb Shmi later it. Proposed.
It's still
Pinchas? You know Shmuel Pinchas? Wow.
It's still a stira, even though maybe it can still depend on a person.
Yeah, because I'll tell you why I think it's still a stira, or at least why I don't like this teretz.
It's a conflict question instead of an internal question to the Shmona Perukim. Meaning, Why would it say mortal status?
Because it's trying to do the same thing. Now, if you think that, let's finish the Malach. If you think that Shemana Prakim, what he's doing is derivation, the cause, the why, that would be nice. But Shemana Prakim was actually entirely missing the why. It doesn't give you the why for anything, including that for this. And just to be clear, the actual reason why Shemana Prakim gives us the theory of the parts of the soul is what? I told you a lot about the why, that you need to be the good of a thing is what it is, but that's not what actually says Shemana Prakim. That says, it does say in the Rambam in Akduma of Perish HaMishnah. But Shemana Prakim actually says something else, because that's why it's focused on the parts of the soul, not on what the soul is. In Shemana Prakim, it seems that the reason you need to know the parts of the soul is because understanding what virtues are, the two kinds of virtues, which are known as, in the Rambam as, there's two kinds of virtues, known as, it's going to be on the test.
Of the body and the
No, there's no virtues of the body in this book.
So the virtues of the intellect and the virtues of the moral.
What we call moral virtues or character virtues is a better word, right? Of course. Very good. Or in the Rambam called Males ha-midos and Males ha-sichlius. Shtais being a lamb is a meditative, according to the Rambam. Well, maybe not being a lamb, but something similar to that, right? Just the malasichlis. But in any case, in order to understand those, you need to understand what that means. And what that means really is the two kinds of virtues which relate to the two parts of the soul known as the intellectual part and the... How's the other one called? The intellectual part is from the intellectual virtues. And the other part is called the...
The intellectual virtues are for the...
Intellect, you could imagine that one.
Soul, and then this is for the, not the will of the soul, it's not good that I don't know this.
You're going to find out. For the appetitive soul in English. Or in Lishna Kodesh, Nefesh HaMisreres. Both of these words are not very descriptive for us, but that's the words that are used. What it means is something like the wanting soul. The drive soul, you could say something like drive or wanting, but wanting is a little complicated word for other reasons. The Rambam doesn't usually use the word want in this book. But anyways, those are the two. And in order to understand what a virtue is, you need to understand what kind of a thing it is. And therefore you need to understand that it's the thing that relates to this part. In other words, it's not a virtue of a habit, is not or a habit of character is not a idea, nor is it an action. Very important, right? It's something that relates mostly or entirely to this part of the soul, which we call the wanting or appetitive part.
The intermediate that we discussed before.
It's an intermediate between being entirely irrational and being entirely rational. That we quoted Aristotle for that, and in Plato it's formulated a little differently. But yes,
the warrior soul.
It's the warrior soul from Plato, but Aristotle doesn't entirely conceptualize it in the same way. Okay, but the kids, Aristotle's version is exactly that. It's the one that we told you, right? It's the one that could be rational. No, you remember these things.
But it's the one
it could be rational in the way that a child
soul functions of the body, right?
Everything is functions of the body. That's
no,
not
meaning like appetite for food and appetite for
not for food is not a good example. Just to be clear, for food is not a potential example. Appetite for honor or appetite for being successful, those kinds of what we would call drives or ambitions or things like that.
Right. I'm just going back to a class that we mentioned in the past where we focused on the stomach as or not the stomach, but the digestive.
We're not talking about the digestive. The digestive or
the digestive is
whole different thing.
The inactive base, and then there's
those
desires are manifested in the wants.
Yes. Okay. The liking of food, which is distinct from the appetite, what we call the appetite, the physical appetite for food, right? Those are two different things. Yeah, that you like food is very different from that you enjoy food. Right? Enjoying belongs to what the Rambam calls the sensitive part, and digesting belongs to even a lower part called the nutritive soul. But the liking of food, what is belongs to the liking part. Actually, a better word maybe for this appetite of soul would be the liking soul. Liking and disliking. That's what it does basically. It likes some things and dislikes something, or has an aversion to other things.
One is while you eat it, the one is before.
It's not while and before. It's different parts of this, different kinds of things.
No. When you say the word enjoy versus liking, What do you mean?
I mean, enjoy. When I mean enjoy, say enjoy, I mean that your sense buds are tickled and they have a certain sense of
That
pleasure.
happens while you eat, right?
I don't care when it happens. I'm not talking about.
for
It's
me
not
to
a
understand what
distinction
you're
in
saying
time. It's not a distinction in time. It's not a distinction in time. It's a distinction in what kind of thing it is. But the like, when I say I like food, I don't mean. We'll have to figure out what I actually do mean, because people are confused about this. But it don't mean that taste buds give me a sensation of pleasure.
It's a different sense.
It's not a sense. It's a different thing.
So tell me
It's called a midah. We call that a
No,
midah.
so tell me, so say it in English now. What does liking mean?
Maybe liking would mean that like
I don't have better words for it for you. I don't have a better word for you for that. It's a kind of judgment. You could call it a certain judgment. You could call it a certain like opinion even, if you really want, although it's not a very good word. But we'll have to give you a different
if you
word
wanted to have the dish that's
to explain what
created
this
in
means.
X and Y restaurant and X and Y place is not a function of your taste buds, it's a function of your drive to.
It's some kind of
experience certain-
exactly. It's a shitta. It's almost a shitta. We would call it like an opinion.
Nothing based on the taste buds at all?
No, not at all. It's different.
That means
It's totally
if I've
distinct.
never tasted this
People are very
thing,
confused about
hold on,
it.
if I've never enjoyed it or not enjoyed it while I ate it, that's why I use the word while, then I wouldn't, then you're saying I still would have be able to have...
Maybe yes and maybe not, but it's not the same thing.
I understand.
You're asking me a different question.
It's the same thing, I'm just asking.
I don't know if you would or you wouldn't.
Define the-
Obviously, people like things that they've never tasted. That's true, but that's not the point. It's not the same thing. When I say I like pizza, I don't mean to say that when I eat pizza, I have a certain tingling in my throat or whatever.
So therefore, it's not the same thing.
I mean that
Yeah.
it's just
No,
something
I'm saying
that
therefore.
It's a different thing.
therefore what?
It's not a sensation.
Meaning pizza is something I would move in when you say I like pizza.
No, I
it's not.
understand,
It's not
no.
the passive liking of
I
pizza.
don't
Like
I
the
understand it's a different
passive,
thing.
it's a different kind of
like,
It's why I would go to the pizza store.
No, but he's asking, Chab is asking that, therefore what? In other
Therefore
words, why would we be metallic now?
why
Just so you should know, this is not the sheet for today. These are things that you should already know by heart from 13 sheet of that. This is no, but that's not going to teach you anything by me telling you that.
No,
Maybe it's
go back
going.
and read it, and then
You should, but it's not going to help you maybe. But this is just for us to know what we're talking about when we talk about the appetitive soul or the liking soul. Let's think about liking pizza. If I like you, okay, me liking you is not reducible to me, and it doesn't mean if it's reducible or if it needs that as a condition, that's a different discussion. But it doesn't mean me having a feeling in my nose or something when I see you. It means I like you. Exactly that. Why would I have to? You know what liking a person means. You know what liking to go on walks is. You know what liking to do exercise is. That's all those things. They're much broader things than they might be connected to some sensations in the body. They might be connected to some theories in the mind. They might be connected to other things, but they're a different thing. It's not so hard. When we talk about food, it's a very complicated example because it's very close to the thing. That's why it's probably not a good example to talk about.
That really makes this.
But that's why we usually talk about social things. It's much easier to understand, right? Liking, like we say the word honor. That's why Plato talked in an easier sense about honor, about wanting to be seen as important, all kind of things like that. Those are things we like.
The sensational aspect of it is
Non-existent. Maybe someone will tell you it is, but you can understand that it's not the point, right? I like to be liked. I like to want to be choshev. I want to be shanid, whatever. Anger, honor, things like that are much easier to understand why they're midas and not sensations.
meaning and conflicts of interest in those areas. Meaning, if I want honor because I don't want to be
We'll
seen
get to this.
eating my pizza
You're
in
making very
public.
complicated. Exactly. That's Plato. We're getting to that another time. Okay. What did I say? I'm trying to be focused where I am. Gosh, people have to know all the things already. I'm going to give you tests. I'm not really going to give tests. Okay. Okay, so today we're saying one thing. Rabbi Yisrael. So just to be clear, this was a good illustration for why you need, very good. This little conversation was a very good illustration for why we need to have parts of the soul in our head to understand what in the Welt virtues are, right? It's not only to derive them, that's very important, right? It's not only to derive them, this thing that I just did now to illustrate the question of what is a like as distinct from a pleasure, something like sensation, is a distinction of parts of the soul, right? It's not a distinction, it's not telling you what to do at all. It's telling you what kind of thing am I talking about. If I tell you there's a mitzvah to have the correct likes, which is literally what the Rambam says in Hilchos Da'as Perek Aleph, right? It's not talking about an action, it's a mitzvah to eat certain things or to do certain things. Saying it's a mitzvah to have certain character virtues, right? It doesn't talk about intellectual virtues there, that's Hilchos Talmud Torah. But it talks about, it talks about character virtues, of every kas, the correct amount of kas, and the correct amount of tava, and the correct amount of stinginess, and so on. Then you need to know what I am talking about in order for you to understand what kind of thing I'm telling you, and therefore most people that mean Mishnah Torah actually have no clue what the Rambam is talking about. So the argument that he has in Shemona Prukim for why you need to have parts of the soul, not to prove what is good, because he doesn't do that, but to know what in the world I'm talking about when I tell you that you should have virtues, and I've talked about two kinds of virtues even, but even if we mostly want to talk about one kind, you need to know which kind it is, or what it means. You need to have this introductory 2 chapters which talks about part of the souls, and the first chapter just lists them, and the second chapter tells you which ones have which kind of virtues. And therefore, it's still a very big kasha on the Rambam why he didn't do that in Mishnah Torah, why he thought that he could frame it as just mitzvahs of having the correct virtues without telling us what a virtue is. But of course, it could be the same answer is true. You could say, well, because the Rambam also doesn't tell us what anything is that he talks about. You're supposed to know that from someplace else. Mishnah Torah is not for that. Mishnah Torah is after there's different kinds of beings, how to live with them or something like that. Yeah, I guess that's the best I have for now.
No, but I just want to point something out, that you're going away from the fact that it's the svura chaylik, right? It's not the svura. It's just telling you what
it's the
is.
what.
So I think that the Rambam does do the what's, if I'm not mistaken.
He does a very bad job. If he's doing it, he's doing a very bad job because nobody understood it until this day.
Well, that's what a leaver is. That's what an esrog is. No, he doesn't tell you what it
happens
is.
Not to.
He doesn't
no.
tell you what a matzah is.
No, he doesn't.
Doesn't?
No, he also doesn't tell you.
Because I think it's
no, it does not. He tells you how to make a matzah.
Right, so Miley, you know what a matzah is.
No, he does not tell you what a matzah is. He tells you how to make a matzah, which
can be with my paitis and
very nice,
and only from the kamishim in dagon and
very cute. Those are halachas of a matzah, but never tells you what it is. No, that's not correct.
What's it called? Whatever shaman, who I think.
No. Whenever he says who I think, he's just giving you Tanach and Gemara. He's never telling you what a thing is. Just to be clear, the Rambam never tells you what things are in Mishnah Torah. He only tells you halachas. It's a book of laws. Laws are not there for defining what things are. Only in the sense of defining what things are for the purpose of a certain law, like the Supreme Court judged that a fish is a bird or something like that. But not in the sense of telling you what things are, which is like ontology that is prior to the law. He never does that, and he definitely doesn't do that in Hilchos Dais, because he tells you should have good midas, and he gives you examples, but he doesn't tell you. I don't think he ever does that. I think if Lamdim often make the mistake of thinking that he does it. I know, but I'm pretty sure that he never does it. He very clearly does laws. The only times he gives definitions is, like I said, if they're legal definitions and not real definitions. And most of his legal definitions, this is me telling you a random thing, is him explaining Gemara and not telling you anything you really need to know if you didn't learn Gemara.
Okay, but if I find you many Rambams that are not...
You will not find one.
Hold on, then it's still shvit, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, for sure. I have a kasha in Hilchos Dais. Yeah, but Hilchos Chumash Matzah, we'll learn Hilchos Matzah. Now we're talking Hilchos Dais. And Hilchos Dais, he doesn't do it, and it's a question on him. I do understand that it fits into his methodology of Mishnah Torah, but I think that it's a problem. I don't have a better response right now. If you people have one, you could tell me.
Also saying these words that in Hilchos Dais doesn't do it is not answering anything, right?
No. Exactly.
Okay.
No, it's not the minig Ram, it's like the minig Amoka. It's the minig in Hilchos Mishnah Torah, two such things. What should I do? Not the minig.
You should try to find, but not Hilchos Dais. Meaning if it's specifically Hilchos Dais that he doesn't do it, then all...
No, he never does it. I don't think he ever does it.
Fine, but you're massive.
It could be that, but
if he does.
Yeah, but I don't think he does it. He doesn't even tell you. I mean... I would say that he never does it. He only does the legal definitions of things. He doesn't do the essential definitions of things which are always prior to the legal definitions. Also in Hilchos Dais, he tells you what's the mitzvah of Olachta B'druchav. He gives you the definition of that. But he doesn't give you says the mitzvah is to have good midas. But now, just to be clear, in all the halachas is not such a big kasha, because most of us know more or less what a matzah is anyways. But most of us don't know what a midah is. And I know many people that have read Hilchos Dais a lot of times and have no idea what a midah is until this day, because they didn't read Shemona Prukim. And even Shemona Prukim is not enough. You need to read the books that he read, which really explain it. But that's okay. So it's a good question. Anyways, we're not talking about this. This is just Akdama. This is just to place us in the... We are talking about it. We already talked about it for 20 minutes. I mean, funny shakran. But anyways, this is just to place us in the book. So we get the logic of the book. Because when you lose the logic of a book, you have no idea what's flying at all. Now we get to chapter 3, and the Rambam says, now that I told you that there's a soul, and it has this and this parts, now let me tell you the sicknesses of the soul. And then in chapter 4 he tells you, let me tell you how the health of the soul is. And then in chapter 5 he tells you what the purpose of all of this is. And that's basically the whole book. Chapter 6 and on are just random discussions. I mean, not random, chas v'sholem, but
Chapter 5 is what? Sorry?
the purpose of all of this.
Oh.
Purpose in what sense? What do you mean when you say purpose? Like what
How many times did you read this book?
It?
No? You didn't read it 10 times yet. Okay.
These are the purpose. What do you mean by that?
In Berekai, what is talk about Berekai? I'm telling you a summary for people that already read it. For people that didn't read it, I'm not very helpful. But mostly, just to be clear, Berekai says Nechazais also, and I think in Perek Gimel, I don't remember where. I'm confusing myself probably. But Berekai is about the Chol Masechel L'Shem Shemaim. Okay, that's the Mishnaic heading for it, and it's about how all these virtues and all these activities have one purpose, which is knowing God, which is the perfection of the soul. And then Perek Vov talks about there's already like side questions that come out of it, and Zayin and Ches also. I mean, they're connected, but the basic theory is just the first 4 or maybe the first 5 chapters. So, and you could see the logic of these 5 chapters, right? I told you the soul. I told you the parts of the soul. I told you which parts of the soul have which virtues. I told you now, and this was in order to tell you the sickness and the health. So I tell you the sickness of the soul, tell you the health of the soul, how to heal it, what's the definition of the health, how to heal it if you're sick, and the end of all of this. Sort of the story of the book makes a lot of sense. And then we just talk like extra questions that are raised when we have this discussion, which is Perek Vav, and Perek Zayin is explaining how this makes you a Novi, and Perek Ches is again like another question that's related to this question of Bechira.
What would be a reason to need to know what the soul is ethically, besides for cultivating a theory of ethical perfection? What would be a reason why I would need to know?
Who said there's another reason? What's wrong with this one?
I don't know if there's. I'm saying is, but I'm trying to figure out if this is a stated question or if it's an internal coherence question in Shemana Prukim.
No, Shemana Prukim does give us the theory of the soul, right?
Right. Okay. So I'm saying
so
it has a different agenda.
Has a different agenda in the sense of
it's trying to give you not the foundational theory, but the causes and their effects.
It doesn't give causes, again. It gives the explanation of what these things are so you understand what a virtue is.
Right, so you understand what a virtue is, not how to attain it. Do you need to
understand?
Is there any reason why we need to understand what a virtue is to know if I'm given the method to attain it?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a fair question. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm going to say that yes, but of course, but
I can understand why it would be helpful. I don't know. I don't understand why it might be necessary.
It's definitely possible. I think it's definitely possible to have some level of virtue for sure. Before, I wouldn't say without. I want to talk about this.
The problem with not having a theory is that you don't know orientation, right? You don't know which one in pursuit of what and what in pursuit of. It's helpful to know what it's addressing so you can understand how to calibrate it, let's say.
Yes. No. So let's. I think again there was two theories that we discussed. One is the theory that we need to know what a good soul is. In order to know what a good one is, you need to know what it is. That's one theory. We explained this many times. How this logic is supposed to work. Remember? Yeah. To know the good anything, you need to know what this anything is. Push it. It's ready. Push it. Yeah. Good, healthy. They're all the same word. Yeah. And then now that I would say that's not the real reason why he give us part.
I understand the kisha to the essay.
Now it's all connected to everything. But we got to go as slow as possible. Then we have a theory of. Then I said that's not really what he does in this book because he's doing specifically parts of the soul. And the reason we need specifically parts of the soul is not because we're looking for the good of each part. That's not really what he's doing. It's really because he wants to explain you what a virtue is, and you really don't understand what a virtue is without understanding the theory of there being different parts of the soul. And actually have proofs for this, like from people like the Chazon Ish and the Tanya, who don't understand what a virtue is because they don't understand the theory of parts of the soul correctly. At least correctly according to the Rambam, maybe they have their own. But yeah, this is because you like me to Chilik and the Tanya. The Tanya doesn't understand what a virtue is. Pretty clearly does not. It's not a mechloig. I don't think I'm arguing with him. I think he would agree with this. I'm not being Chilik on him. I think because he's somewhat confused or he's working with. I'm not getting into what story that is. But anyways, you understand that in Tanya there's no place. The Tanya's theory of the soul doesn't have place for virtues, or the Chazon Ish's theory of the soul. And that's because he doesn't have the idea of this part of the soul who has virtues. Okay? Clear? And this is why I think that you could learn Mishnah Torah many times and not understand why you would have, in other words, you wouldn't understand the lumdis. Why do we have a separate mitzvah to have good midas? Why is it not good enough to have just all the mitzvahs masiyas and shine and be shmir shalt alev or something like that?
It's not oriented towards a principled goal.
No, not because of that. No, I was not saying that. What I was saying is that there's a mitzvah to have a good midah. Now, to have a good midah means, the Rambam claims it's such a mitzvah. It's a perfection of the human and it's a mitzvah, both, right? And the mitzvah means, how do you mekayem this mitzvah? Who was yoytz to this mitzvah? How are you being mekayem this mitzvah? Now, just to be clear, it's not, in the Tanya does have some concept that's very close to this, but according to Tanya's language, it's called being a tzaddik, not enough to do a binary. But the Tanya seems to think that a tzaddik is something else, because he's missing a level in between the crazy big tzaddik and the normal person, and he invented a binary to solve that, but it doesn't understand how our binary really works. Point is, I'm just trying to make you happy, that's all. The point is, you understand what I'm saying, right? You should listen to my shirim in Neoplatonic ethics, and you'll understand the whole. Now,
with that guy?
Yeah. It's all to explain about Machlokes of the Tanya, all those shirim.
Truthfully, it's very hard for me to follow.
Just like it's hard for us to follow when Shmuley talks, because you already read too many things. But we're trying anyways, right? What was I saying? So what I'm saying is like this: it's a mitzvah to have good midas. Do you understand this mitzvah? Most people, I propose that most people don't understand what it means. I'll tell you why. At least lefishat Rambam. Again, you could be yoytz lefishat to someone else. Because most people think when you say leik with having good midas, it just means to act appropriately to your friends, right? That's what having a good midah means in leikot, right? Nachon? Avodas hamidus, this is avodas hamidus that the Mashgiach talks about. Okay, I'm not going to get to the sheet I plan to say today. This is another sheet. What does avodas hamidus mean in leikot? You'll get to it if you stay for 3 hours. Yeah, you're not going to stay. What does avodas hamidus mean? No, tell me.
Behaving well.
Yeah, but like specifically when they talk about midas in yeshiva, what are they talking about?
Being nice to your friends.
Exactly. They're talking about specific actions, right? Specific activities, right? Actions, which are not a mitzvah because it's very hard. Why they don't just call it mitzvahs? Some of them they do. Chofetz Chaim tried to do that, right? He wrote a book, Havas Chesed, mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to smile 4 times a day to your friend, 5 times a day is mitzvah chassidus, 3 times a day is b'diavad, and 0 times something like that, right? And if he asks you for a loan, you should give him up to $500 like this, and the kids it. That's hilchas mitzvah chavayda, right? Our midas is basically that. Just since it's more fuzzy, we call it midas instead of halachas, right? Correct? Like Lashon Hara, the Lashon Hara is Lachas Dayas, right? You know.
Which is interesting, right?
It's not interesting because it's...
No, I'm saying, but Haftarah was not.
It is, of course.
Also, but not, like mainly I think it's in, it's Ivan.
It says, Chayiv Lev, it's called it the Misrot, Halacha in the Rambam. Okay, in Lachas Dayas, in the beginning, in the middle, I think, in Lachas Dayas, not in the beginning is about Midas, but it said it afterwards. It says Lachas Dayas, in the land, before Lachas Dayas, it says this. We talked about it once in the thing, anyway, so now, this is not what the Rambam, according to the Rambam, even if you act nicely always to your friend, you're not yoytz to the mitzvah of having good midas. Shit is the Rambam. I should do andere shit. Shit is the Rambam. Why?
In Mishnah Torah.
Yeah, even in Mishnah Torah. Of course, it doesn't explain very well, which people don't understand. But even in Mishnah Torah. Why? Because having a good midah means having your chaylik, this part of the appetitive soul, the liking or disliking soul, that's why we call it appetite, because there's a dislike, being in a good state, or having good habits. State is not a very good word, but anyway, having good habits. What it means is, according to the Rambam, you have to be, this is the simplest way that I have to say it. It's not enough to bring the food to your friends when they have chnus and so on. You have to be the kind of person that likes, I have to say the word like, because we're talking about the liking part of the soul. No, it's important. You have to be the kind of person that likes to help his friends. Until you're that kind of person, you're not yoytz in the mitzvah of alachte b'drachav. You can ask a kasha, does the Eivish like things? But that's the kasha that Rambam himself asked somewhere. But Al Kapunim, that's what the Rambam says in Hilchas Dayas. This is what it means to have a good midah. It's very different from maaseh. Mitzvah's maaseh means give a mitzvah. Maybe that's even a way to have good midas. I'm not saying that it's not part of it. That's part of a fiyas on Eivish, right? But the mitzvah is to be the kind of person that likes it. In other words, this is very clear in the Rambam. That's why they have whole Parak Vov, which talks about the conflict between this and being a kovesh yitzra, right? Remember Parak Vov. Everyone should learn 5 times before you come to the next sheet. Any case, I'm going to let you in anyways, don't worry. Just saying it, you should. Right? But and as long as it's a voide for you have to force yourself to do it. You're not mekan the mitzvah having good with this lefi the Rambam. Nicht mekan. Can I say over again? Like every mitzvah, I weiß was the get it. But the mitzvah is to be more of the kind of person that likes and in the correct amount. Too much is also not good. Figure out exactly how much you're supposed to like to help your friend, and be that kind of person. Like it. Is it clear? Clear. And by the way, that's true for all midas. There's a midah like something again. A Lakewood. This is not called midas. Lakewood it's called taivas, right? It's not avodas achila, avodas taivas, which is a whole different thing from midas, right? Just to be clear, according to the Rambam, it's not according to Plato, by the way, but according to the Rambam and Aristotle, these belong to the same part of the soul. Like I said, it's about liking food. It's not about enjoying food. There's no problem according to the Rambam of enjoying food. The Rambam has no problem with enjoying food.
It's not a virtue.
It's a virtue. The liking or liking in the correct amount, not too much and not too little, is the virtue of, how is it called, this virtue in Greek? And the Rambam has a weird word for it, we'll get to when we learn Parak Dalet. But in Greek it's called sophrosiny, or in English temperance. If you have the virtue of temperance, we don't talk about it enough these days. Temperance means liking pleasure, food and sex and I don't know what other pleasures people have. And in the correct amount. Mostly not too much.
Because for the help of the soul, meaning.
Yeah. Usually it's too much, so therefore it's usually said to be less than you already like it. But it's possible to be too little, theoretically. Like to be too big of a purish, that's what the Rambam has in Perek Dalet, how you could be too big of a purish. But most people don't have that problem, Baruch Hashem, none of us are doing too many segifim, we don't have to talk about it. Baruch Hashem, we learn one part of the Rambam that's not relevant, this problem we don't have. Okay. But
it's useful to demonstrate that we're looking for...
Yeah, it's useful, and it's useful to hack on the get it ever. But besides that, it's not useful. Which is not Mishnah, it's not useful, right? Besides for that.
This is mamash fakir from like what they teach you, right? That's what I'm saying, right?
I don't know if it's fakir from anything.
No,
Who
they
teaches?
tell you like when I came to learn, when I went to learn Chassidus certain places, and he goes, what do you mean? So he likes to do chesed, that's why he's not a beis or whatever, he's not doing like...
Even just to be clear, even the Tanya has some problems with this, but yeah, because of the Nefesh B'Am Savayid, there's Bashunim, whatever. Yeah, the Chassidus they try, but that's because, again, it's a confusion of different levels. That's why I think Chassidus is always jumping to either the highest level or the lowest level, and they forget that there's middle level. There's actually ways to be a Bainani. You don't have to, the tzaddik that he has is a very high level, and if you learn Mashir and Platonism, you'll see that's called, in Plato, the Platonists call that the level of, purificatory virtues, whole different thing. We're not talking about. We're only talking about political virtues today, and intellectual virtues. And the Ram doesn't really have this. Okay, this is way complicating everyone. But anyways, just so you should know, Sean, yeah, they have a problem with that. But according to the Rambam, that is the mitzvah. If you don't do that, you're not yotze. A lot of people know this. Some Bala Misr actually do say it this way, that you have to advise. If you're a guy that doesn't like to do a Torah for Yibs Tachai, right? Even Chassidish know this, right? They like talking about truths and Hashem and stuff for the Masa. I never thought found those the only Hashem mitzvah is a chai, right? The Baal Shem Tov said, why don't you're allowed to be a chai? The mitzvah is a chai, or a chai akovish sitzra, be real. The Baal Shem Tov said, why don't we say a bruch on the mitzvah of tzedakah? Because busy are not in the gartel, or man at starten, right? But this is just a very cool way of bringing out the same point. Don't do tzedakah, we don't do the Hashem mitzvah. In other words, that's the mitzvah. How good is the mitzvah? So you have to do that also the Hashem mitzvah. But actually here, no, I'm serious. By the way, I'm serious. It's Vaikas. The Rambam says that this is the mechitzas. This is how you get close to God. It's not a joke. This language is not something I made up. But actually, the mitzvah is to like it. Now you can ask me why there's such a mitzvah. Why is there any of liking it? The Rambam asked that question in Perek Vov. But that's the Rambam's understanding of it. And this is very different than if you don't understand that there's a part of the soul that does things, and there's a part of the soul that thinks, and there's another part of the soul that likes and dislikes things. And the whole din of midas is only chal on this geder b'fnei atzma. If you believe that doesn't exist, that geder b'fnei atzma, like Chaznish, for example, doesn't seem to believe that exists, then there can't be a mitzvah of midas. The machloikas, the greatest machloikas, la'alucha, how you make a mitzvah of alach v'drucha. This is a serious machloikas, that doesn't happen. Anyways, you're right? Makes sense what I'm saying? I'm saying in the noise of liking to do chesed, but it's the same thing with, like I said, the same thing with tavas. You have to like food, and liking not in the sense of enjoying. Like I said, there's nothing, enjoying food is a natural thing. Some people are very confused about this also, right? They think that being against tavas means not enjoying it. It says even in Shulchan Aruch, but it doesn't mean this. It means not liking, and we'll get to understand what liking means soon. But it means not liking it as a person, right?
That can mean that it has external influence on you?
Okay, we'll figure out what liking is. No, I don't think. I have a certain understanding of what liking means.
Or you're attracted to
or liking it in the correct amount.
In the direction of.
So wait. But
It's a desire.
exactly a desire, but not a physical desire in the sense of
Affinity to.
all these words. But you have to distinguish that from the sensation of pleasure. Of course, it's related to it. The desire is for that sense you could have.
I don't think someone who's
a sensation is a better word than feeling. A feeling could mean
to,
like emotions.
I don't think someone who's accustomed themselves to eating healthy food and has the physical enjoyment of sour sticks is less than mine. They've just
right, but they have a different desire. Their desire in relation to food is different. They don't have a desire for sour sticks, although they would enjoy it. Actually, sour sticks don't taste good, but besides, no, like
you're turning the whole theory on its head. You're turning your own theory on its head.
No, that's because there's also training on the physical level. Okay. Sure. Because like sweet things, I don't enjoy many sweet things because I'm just used to.
No.
No, if you're not used to it, if you're used to drinking coffee without sugar, you don't like it. It seems to ruin the coffee and things like that. I don't know if you drink coffee with sugar. That's an example. And the same thing if you eat less sweets because they're too sweet. I think that's why, because you get more sensitive to the sweetness in like a piece of fish or something. Anyways, but that's not important, right? We're not talking about that. That's health. I don't even if it's even health, maybe it is, right? That's a different subject. We're talking about the liking, and which is what I will explain today is that's why we need to have the parts of the soul. Otherwise, you have no idea what midas are, what virtues are. Now we're going to get to Shmuli's question. Verstehst? Welche midas do in Unismart? I'm going to make a shir on the midas of technology. I already did a shir on the Kabbalah of technology. But we have to do a shir on the technology according to the Rambam. Did you listen to my shir on technology according to the Zohar? What about technology according to the Rambam? Go nicht wert? Hi, hello. Yeah, we're going to finish soon. What about the technology according to the Pshita Shamik Krubakitza? We have to figure it out. Okay. Now, what time did I start this sheet? 9 o'clock? Okay, so at least not like 15 minutes. Okay. Now we're up to this. Now we're saying, what are we saying now?
You're about to get to my problem, my question.
Oh, now we're going to Shmuli's question. Right. So now we had a kasha on the Rambam. We're asking Gestiris Rambam that in Shmuel Perukim says in order to know the midas, you have to know the parts of the soul. And we just explained very well why. And it happens to be that most people that learn Rambam don't end up to understand. They don't understand. Maybe they have good midas. We'll get to that. But they don't understand what it means to have a good midah. And therefore they could say this according to my understanding that I'm not yaitza. So then it's a kasha how the Rambam allow himself to do the Hilchos Deretz without telling us this, right? And of course, I'm emphasizing this because if someone can tell me that the Rambam does tell us what a soul is in Hilchos Deretz Perek Dalet, but it doesn't have the parts of the soul, which is what we're interested in. It's just the metaphysics of what a soul is. So
that's not knowing the parts would allow us to calibrate it properly?
No. I told you, knowing the parts allows us to know what a midah is. If you don't know that there's some liking part of a person called the Nefesh HaMesaderes, you don't know what a midah is. What is that? Don't keep on going back to something else.
You don't know what a midah is because you don't know what the
kind of thing it is. No. What kind of thing a midah is, exactly. What kind of a thing it is. Is it a piece of rock? Is it a...
Right, but that doesn't seem to be any barrier to attainment of it.
Very good. Wait, now we're getting to your question.
Okay.
Not just explaining why to understand. You're asking me that we need to understand, like the numbers. Now we have to know, is it possible to have good midas without knowing what they are? And maybe that would be a teretz for the Rambam, because the Rambam is not worried in Mishnah Torah about you getting the lamdas right. With Mechila to all the lamdim, that's basically what they think the Rambam is for. The Rambam was really meant to be a halacha saif, not a lamdas saif, right? And therefore, maybe the Rambam just wanted us to have good midas without knowing what a midah is. Not so important. That's what you were trying to say. I have to think if that's possible, but that's what the Rambam was.
Yeah, and the question is if there's a deficiency in your ability to...
Would that be possible? But I'm thinking of a different teretz. Maybe the teretz is that in the Rambam's times, everyone knew what a midah is. They didn't have this funny pshutim that we have now.
That's that.
Hello, you keep looking for that. You read that article, you'll see a lot of things. Read it. Oh, you read it? Very good.
What do you mean the Rambam?
I told you I prepared for the sheet. You told me I should have read Perek Gimel instead of...
I wrote that also.
I read Perek Gimel, but I read Perek Gimel 2 months ago.
No. 2 months ago it doesn't count. It's like.
That's when we.
I also read Parshas Bamidbar last year. It's not
that's
not
when
yet.
we were up to it.
No, we're still up to it.
What do you mean by in his times? People
In
knew what it was.
parentheses.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So when did this come out? I mean.
The Shmuel Perukim is giving more. We can't deny the reality that it gives more of an explanation. But we could say, so it depends what you mean. If someone will give you a good explanation of the parts of the soul, no. But when the Rambam says, it starts in maybe these kind of things are like common assumptions. Like if I tell you Midas Toivis, you understand what it means based on what they taught you in Yeshiva about Midas Toivis. Not because you're a big philosopher that has an alternative theory of Midas Toivis. It's just that's like the concepts that are in the air in Lakewater in New Jersey in 2025.
Even though it's the wrong.
I'm not saying if it's wrong or right. I'm just saying it's different. You have a certain concept that you got from somewhere, not from me. You got it from the Zeitung, whatever. Right. And the same way in the Rambam's times, people probably, and I might have had the concept, probably did, had the concept of what a midah is. Maybe not precisely, maybe they didn't entirely can't give you a definition if you ask them. So it works, the audio is still working, but they probably knew what it is in the sense of a like. If you would ask the guy and you would tell him a midah is a like or a dislike, they would say, yeah, it makes sense. Nowadays we tell you the midah means liking to help your friend, they look at you like this. Because they were taught a different pshat, but those people weren't taught that yet. So they're still okay. So they don't have the full theory. You could still, that would be a probably
full term.
Exactly, a more reasonable pshat. Whenever you talk to someone, you can't explain them every word you're saying. You use words that you assume that people more or less understand what they mean. That would be probably a better pshat than what I was going to say now. But anyways, I'm going to answer your question, even though it's not related to this pshat. Then Shmuel is saying something else, which is very important because it gets us into this article that I told you to read. But it's 9:48.
Still 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Not me, maybe you though. We always limit it in time because we have a body and all these things. So what I wanted to say is, so now there's a different question. There's a different question. There's a different question about Nasav and Nishma, right? There's a question about Nasav and Nishma. The question is, if you could just do it and have those midas, in other words, could you like it without knowing that you're being taught to like it? I said that a midas are like, or dislike, and you said most people don't know that. They think that a midas is something that you do in a specific area. But maybe I could just tell you to do it, and you'll automatically start liking it, and that's enough.
Or I got this disposition through some other way. I don't know.
Which way? You don't get nothing from the air. You get it from doing it.
No, some people are born with it.
Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the mitzvah. But we're talking about the mitzvah. We're talking about the action.
Liking it for the wrong reason, even considered liking it.
But I might choose.
That's for the wrong reason.
I might choose to temper my anger for reasons other than the goodness of my soul, right?
No, we're not talking about the goodness of the soul. That you're not going to get for sure. We're not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about having it.
So even when it applies let's say to give a very crude notion, let's say to give tzedakah, right? Let's say I think like what's going on in tzedakah is like, I don't know, you're gonna take money and you're gonna build roller coasters with it, instead of being found as in other words, I come to you and I tell you like, this is never Chanamuna and whatever, and you have to be found for this tzedakah is gonna make Shabbos for or whatever, right? So then I could like doing it, right? It's the same giving the money. You understand? That's like that in that mashal, that's teaching the person like why to like it because you're gonna help out this person's life, and then it could be like, oh, you're gonna give money and they're gonna build a roller coaster from it, right? It's a very different thing of the reason why I'm giving the money. So can I teach a person to like giving money if it's a wrong reason?
What do you mean the reason?
Meaning there's all sorts of reasons why I might want to be less angry.
Yeah, I think that yes. Yes, but again, you remember that by my theory, it has to be like this. Why? Because liking is nothing to do with, it's not nothing to do with reasons, but it's not a reason. Because the reasoning part of the soul is the third part. And by the way, when we say the reasoning part, right, the intellectual part is not a very good translation. The reasoning part would be better. All that means is the ability to give and respond to reasons, right? In other words, if I tell you, right, just to be very clear, there's some people that you could explain them something. In other words, you can give them a reason for something, and they understand the reason, right? We say they can be reasoned with, right? It is reasonable, literally, right? A reason means something like this is good, therefore you should want it, right? Or this is bad, therefore you should not want it. Or what other reasons are there?
See, there's other reasons. There's other goods.
I'm talking about practical reasons. Wait. I'm talking about practical reasons. Talking about practical reasons, right? This is good because you want it, or if you want this, the way to do it is to do that, therefore you should do that, right? That's called giving a reason. That's called reasoning, yeah? Now, this is something that not everyone knows how to do. You've probably met people that don't know how to do it
Yet.
at all. A disabled person, or at some stage, you just can't be reasoned with. You could make him do things. Not saying you could make almost anyone do things. I mean, as long as you have the power, there's all kinds of power. You can convince him even, you could influence him, you could just push him with a stick. You could do all kinds of things. What? A child, exactly, a child. That's why we talk about bar mitzvah, right? Which means can't be reasoned with, right? You try. People get frustrated sometimes with their children. Sometimes, but of kinder is not chal. No, we don't chal, and right, it's just not chal. You can give him patch. In other words, it doesn't mean that he's stupid. It just means this koicha reason doesn't exist. Lo kayam. Or at least not enough to work. At least maybe it forgets it after 5 seconds. It doesn't work. Whatever it is. Yeah, whatever. Besides, we got to figure out exactly with children. There's such a level, and this shows us that being able to reason is very different from being able to like things. Because children could like things, right? We looked at that. Children are a proof of this difference of these parts of the soul, right? Reason doesn't nishchal. When he's 2 years old, there's no reason. He can't. And in Medafi has gar nicht laufen, weil ich hab das nicht, dass he's stupid. Not even stupid, right? There's no like software, right? There's no API that taps this. Now it's not 20 o'clock at night, and therefore, and when we don't sleep, this hostigal Torah is a reason. It's a very simple reason. There's nothing very deep. Most even retarded people get it, but a baby doesn't get it, right? Pavos doesn't get it. There's no now. And but do babies have midas? Do they like and dislike certain things? And once they're 5 months or whatever, I don't know. There's some other age to figure out exactly.
Why not?
They do. Yeah, of course, right? So reason and liking are two different things. Of course, reason could make the like do things. I could explain you that you should like something, but it still would take another step for you to actually like it. At least it's not the same thing. And now that's what
oneself.
Yeah, but this is what we explained when we just talked about this middle part.
How can you be taught to like something?
Of course you could be taught to like something.
How?
Because you're a reasonable human being. But that's not the same.
Always
exactly. It's not. It's that's what we call the like. That's what. Some people are not reasonable. Very good. I know those people.
So
those are children.
How would the reasoning with you make you like?
No. So let me finish. Let me say the Torah because this is the time when I start speaking. I'm not letting you talk because I have to finish the sheet. So, of course, this is like Tanya says. If you go around thinking that your liking can't be reasoning with, that's nonsense. Of course, it can be. That's what most of what reason does is explain the liker, what to like. Or at least relevant to this. Maybe there's reason to learning abstract things and stuff. We're talking about practical reason now. Right? But it's not the same thing, right? In other words, understanding that something is good and liking it are not the same thing. If you understand that something is good, you will be able to there's like another step, Kaylee. You have to tell the liking part, and now you should like it. Now that step is a little more complicated than just telling it, but just explaining that it's a different din. That's why Aristotle said that the liking part is chatzi rational. He said it's like a child. If you give him the right prizes, he starts liking it. But if not, he doesn't.
Meaning, let's say, for example, I didn't know that eggs, let's say, are healthy, and someone rationally proves to me that eggs are healthy. Right? Now I have to accustom myself to liking it, right?
Not to liking it in a physical sense, right? To liking it in a liking sense.
Right.
Because they had an emotional sense.
Just like being healthy. It was nothing to do with the eggs.
Right. Okay, but you could start liking eggs too.
That's what I have to figure out. Meaning now that the eggs are identified with being healthy.
You could.
But it doesn't mean you like eggs.
Let's put it this way, right? My wife is a major health nut.
Okay.
If she finds out that almond flour is all of a sudden, they discover something with it that it's bad for your body, right? She'll be repulsed by it in a certain sense, right?
But that doesn't.
It's not because she enjoys the taste of flour, and she doesn't enjoy the taste of almond flour more or less.
I'm not sure. Maybe yeah. I'm not sure. Wait, I'm just gonna have to finish my medrash at least to wrap things up because I'm sorry, can't listen to everything you're saying. Only halfway. No. Let's try to figure this out. So. Why did I say this whole thing? So we understand what we're talking about when we say that we want to talk to the liking part. We want it to like the correct things, right? Now, we shouldn't be confused. it's not the same thing as knowing, right? Knowing or reasoning is a different part. Now, the liking thing, just to be clear, can't reason. We could say it can't. You could say it by itself. It can't reason by itself. That's a very good definition. The liking part can never realize that something it made a mistake. Realizing it made a mistake. That's where, like, the most important part of reasoning, right? Might be wrong. Many people don't have that level either. It's nachal madrag, but right. So the liking part never realizes that it made a mistake as a liking part. But that doesn't mean that it can't be explained. It can't be taught. Maybe the word explained would be wrong, but it can be taught. Why? Because it does respond to reasons. It doesn't create reasons, but it does respond to reasons. I can literally, like you said, I am talking about this kind of liking. If you are a kind of person who is reasonable, right? But you like things that are healthy, and look, this is healthy, so now you like it, right? Literally like it. Not doesn't taste good for you. We're not talking about tasting, right? We're talking about you liking it. Now you like it. The taste is a different level. That you have to work on the physical level. But when you start liking it, because I explained it to you. Now, it's not that it's easy, because maybe I'm so used to not liking it that I still feel like, wait, so I have to tell myself 100 times I like it. Maybe I'll forget. Maybe I have to train myself into that. But I could teach myself. The rational part could teach the how we call this part, the liking part, to like it. This is the Tani Zuk that you have to kill the liking part. That's a funny theory. Why would you have to kill it? You could teach it. He can't talk for himself. He could talk back, just to be clear, which is one of the rayas that he has a little cycle, right? We talked about this when Aristotle gave this raya, right? Because if you push a piece of wood, it just gets pushed. If you push your midas, they push back. So there's someone there, right? So you got no problem. The ones he's pushing back. Oh, okay. So we could explain you that you're pushing back wrong. And how do we explain you? Also by reasoning, and also by talking in your language. Now, your language is not entirely reason.
It's like your language.
The kind of things which you are merely made out of, right? The cycle part, the reasoning part, is just a thing, made out of gavra, whatever, made out of reasons. That's what it is. The choil is the reason. Now, this liking thing is not the choil is the reason. It might be able to be reasoned with, but it's the choil is to like things or dislike things, right? Now, I could tell you should like, but he's not a chefts of shod. He's only b'derech agavi. Could it happen sometimes that there's such a thing as should. What he does do is just like things. Now, which thing does he like?
How do I engage liking, though?
Very good. Which things does he like?
They respond to the reason.
No, but it's not the reasoning part. He likes the things that he likes. Now let's figure out how liking works by itself. It responds to reasons, but it doesn't create reasons. So it likes the things that it likes, or you could say something like it likes the things that things are good for him. But things in a different sense of think. I shouldn't say the word think. Something like, that's why we say sometimes we could say perceive. Yeah, but not in this sense. Since we're making a chilek, cycles doesn't like. It likes, we could say, we like the truth, but liking the truth is not the same liking as liking to eat pizza. It's different kind, different miss.
Is it?
Yeah.
The myth of what's honor?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to understand the truth is a different myth of liking than honor?
Yes. You could use honor in the service of liking the truth. You could say, ich bin ein Mensch, my kuvod besteht von liking the truth, but then you're using honor. Yes, the argument is double. But if the actual liking of truth is a different kind of liking. It's like you could say it's the dvaikus, right? It's the she'ifa, how do you say? The reaching of your receiver of truth to the truth itself, right? I call it a wanting or a liking, because it's like the same as a tzitzich, right? It's a certain attraction, right? But it's not attraction the way you're attracted to a beautiful woman, or you're attracted to a certain food, or you're attracted to honor. It's different. We use the word attraction for all of them like an abstract sense, but it's a different kind of thing.
So reason could bring out a new like, or it just expands?
You can't bring in, it doesn't make geshmaim. There's this like koyach of liking things. Now, which things does it like? The things that it likes. It can be explained, but it's not enough to be explained. What it needs to be taught is, what needs to be done, it needs to be taught. And that's why I use the word taught rather than the word reasoned with or explained. And how does it get taught? By doing it a lot of times. That was the practical answer. By being used to it. Because it likes the things that it's used to. That's the sort of reason. It's not a reason, it's just what it likes. It doesn't make sense that you like the things that it used to, but that's how the koich how liking works. It likes the things that it's used to, maybe it's a little more complicated than that, but this is a simplified version. And therefore, if you want to teach it, it's a mitzvah to teach. Mitzvah of midas is to teach your midas to be good, which means to teach your likings to like the correct things. Now, how do you teach it? Of course, you could start from the reason, but then you have to teach it. It's not enough you should know. You have to, the sense of the cycle should know. You have to teach it. And how do you teach it? By making it do it. Now, this doing it doesn't have to be in a reasonable way. That's why we have medrash lishma bulishma, right? Just like these little demushal. You could teach a child. We teach children to have good midas before they understand what the midas are, before they even understand what a midah is. And literally, if you have a good education, then you grow up with good midas. If your father did his job or your school or whatever, you grow up with certain good midas, or at least some level of good midas, without you having reasoned yourself into it, and without you knowing even what a midah is.
I could also be guided to doing the process myself with reason, right?
We're not getting to that. We're talking now about, you could a lot of things. Of course you could, but now we're talking about what the actual level of midas are. Now you're talking about jumping levels. If we're talking about the actual level of having likes, now this is actually true that people like what they're used to. Now maybe there's some deeper, when I say this you have to understand what it means, but in any case, and therefore by training it, therefore, you'll explain me a lot of time, no problem. Therefore, we have chenecha with this. Did I say the shira around mitzvahs chenecha here? Anyways, the whole idea of mitzvahs chenecha is because we assume that there's not only mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs are in some sense also midas toivas. Okay, not too more complicated. But the point is that this is midas before knowing what a midah is, or before knowing the why of them. And because a midah is like ke'iliyat, like I said, it's halfway as a psychological thing, but it's also halfway like a physical thing. Just like you could teach a table. How do you teach a table to be a table? You have to have some cycle, you have to explain it. You have to have an idea of a table in your head. Otherwise it's not going to be a good table. But also, mainly the way to teach a table to be a table is by sanding it down and painting it and cutting it in the right way. It's passive, right? It just becomes a table, right? You didn't realize that whenever you make a table, you're teaching a piece of wood to be a table. Think about it. Okay. Chana.
What?
The table guy, the carpenter that makes tables, he's just a teacher of wood. He teaches them how to be tables. Not by teaching them, because they don't do it themselves, they don't understand how to. So he just does it for them. But that's what chinuch is anyways, for the most part. Chinuch is that the child, the thing you're teaching is passive for the most part. And you're teaching it, right? Now, and that just works. He doesn't have to understand, but I have to understand that he doesn't. In the same way, if we're teaching the liking part to become good, he doesn't have to understand. He's never going to understand the same way I understand, the same sense that I understand. Right? And I could just form it in some sense by just pushing it, right? There's like a midah called how much you like to give money to other people. How is this midah called? What? Yeah, the Rambam calls it kili and pazrunis and kilis. Kili is stinginess and the opposite, right? And the correct midah is, what is it called? I remember. Liberality, I think Harsel calls it. Giving the correct level of giving, okay? Nobody's the correct level yet, so you should always give more to my campaign. But besides for that, there's a correct level. And I didn't forget my business, don't worry. And that's something that can be taught. Like the Rambam says, you give a lot of time to tzedakah, because most of us are on the wrong side of it. Sometimes there's someone that's the other side, but most of the time. And slowly you become a person that likes giving tzedakah, right? He doesn't, not doing the mitzvah, he's not forcing himself, he's liking it, right? And that's without explaining. It's not by explaining, it's just by doing it, right? So in that sense, it is true that if you just do it, even if you do it and think it is a mitzvah, that's why those people that think they have to do things like mitzvah without liking them, they have a very hard job. Especially if they're Frema. Because I actually don't believe any Frema that says that he does anything l'shem mitzvah not because he likes it. Not a FFB, Bal Shiva, weiß ich nicht. Because it's literally like if you grow up doing mitzvahs, that's literally what you like. You like keeping Shabbos. Not, and people get confused. They think that this is a like in the sense of a sensation. It tastes good. It doesn't taste good. It's something that you like because that's what you do, and people like what they do. That's all. In the liking sense, right? Maybe there's different levels. Like you could have the theory of it, or you could have also other things. But you do like it. It becomes a midah, and it's problematic. The Ram doesn't hold that there's a midah of keeping Shabbos. But actually, I will get the paragraph to that. But at least for the middas, like that, the Ram is more the middas, like not talking lashon hara or taking less lashon hara or giving tzedakah or things like that. It's literally a midah, and by being taught to do that, even na'aseh v'nishma, without knowing the why or the what it even is, you do get that midah. And not only do you get that, now this was the sheet that I was going to give, and that we got to finally after an hour, but we're not going to say it next time, which is that in order for me to start a conversation with you about what good is, you have to already have that kind of habit. And there's problems with the education that we have for this and malice that we have for this, but we have to get to that. That's another third sheet, just related to this article.
To what extent are differences from standard American education beneficial for this, or
to what extent the Lakewood education helps, and to what extent it hurts for this? These thoughts that you say they hurt, but the reality helps. Okay, but that's different in the sheet. I probably said it already in a different language, a different time.
I think so.
But the Nikida is, that's all the Nikida. So it has to be an answer of Nishma. Okay, that's the thing that I didn't explain, so just saying it. But it's a different thing. The having the like, which doesn't have to come at least from understanding. And even when you do understand, it's a second step besides for understanding.
Appreciate is understanding already?
Maybe. Was it appreciate?
I was thinking about,
I'm not sure.
I think appreciate sometimes.
No, I think appreciate. I think actually, I'm thinking now that appreciate.
Like jobs because you're just used to keeping jobs.
Yeah, I think that appreciate. I would think that appreciate is a good word for what I call like. Because I'm struggling with the word like. Because when you say like, I had the discussion with the guys in Muncie then, and the guy was saying I do shvias because I like the cheesecake, or I like the feeling of being up at night and eating the cheesecake. But that's not true. That person doesn't understand that it's something in between enjoying and liking and thinking. And between enjoying and thinking is liking, or you could say appreciation. Maybe it's a good word.
Yeah, I think there's good examples of things that you like and don't enjoy.
I actually think that appreciation would be a good word for this.
I was thinking about the word appreciation the whole
Maybe
time.
I don't know. You have to tell me how you use the word.
In understanding of the like.
Yeah, right.
No, but meaning, let's say, you can even
appreciating the liking.
Appreciate is a word that means something like acknowledge as good, right?
So there's already more cycle.
Yeah. No, but it's a
yes, but it's not without the why, right? Cycle has to have more of a why. You can't explain me like if I appreciate it, and the guy, like I'm telling, there's the guy that comes in the plane and tells you, okay, but why do you like it? And you say, I don't know, I grew up with this, so I appreciate it, right?
So that's still on the like level.
That's not appreciated.
It's I somehow think maybe appreciate is a good word. I should start using it because people seem to know what it means.
No, but appreciation also implies something that could be done at a distance in a way that doesn't draw me. Like, yeah, I appreciate
okay,
like I appreciate that.
Okay.
This is something that is also motivates you, right? It speaks to your will.
It doesn't. If you appreciate something, it does motivate you. It doesn't force you. Nothing forcing you.
I know, but I mean,
I like to eat healthy
there's
food.
also things I appreciate. Some I pursue and some I don't. Right? This is an appreciation that would or not demand, but
the one that makes you keep showering.
There's a certain pursuit of it, right? If honor is something that I can appreciate honor, if it happens to come.
Okay, but you're talking about like something like second-hand appreciation. Like I appreciate when the other guy does it, but we're talking about I appreciate I myself do it. Right? That's a different thing.
Plenty of things. Let's put it this way. I appreciate grappling from a mountain. It's not something I go out of my way to do.
I don't appreciate it. Okay, like what's the point? The mountain is there. Why are you looking for it? If you have to get somewhere, mind it.
It could be that there's a whiskey out there that's drinking it. I'll appreciate it, right? Maybe. It wouldn't necessarily draw me.
Okay, but maybe that's just because it's not like a priority now. Yeah, well, the other whiskeys to try before.
No, I mean that like
the word like.
I don't think appreciation captures the.
Okay, you understand what I'm getting at. There's something in between knowing or understanding and sensation, and I call that like. And we have to figure out if your word appreciation is closer to here or closer to there. I actually like the idea of talking about this word.
I think appreciation is in between.
I appreciate it. I appreciate this word. Kannst du das löschen?